Hello everyone, welcome back to Wade the JavaScript. In this video, we are going to learn about functions in JavaScript. So let's get started. So the first question here is, what is a function? So let's try to understand it with a real example. Let's say you have a printer and it sits idle until you send it a print command, right? And when you send it a set of instructions like print this file and this number of copies and keep this in this color format, black and white or whatever, and this is the type of this printed file, like it could be PDF, image or whatever. So based on that, it performs a specific task which is printing a file. So a function is basically like a printer. It waits for you to send a command, and when you do it, it performs specific task based on whatever you are asking it to do and what it's supposed to do. So basically, a function is like a printer. You give it a set of instructions to print a heart in a pink color, and unless it reaches the number of copies you have asked it to print, it keeps printing. Okay, now let's see the syntax of a function. How do we write it? So this is the syntax of a simple function. We define it with the keyword function. Next is the function name, which can be any name based on a use case. Like we have taken this example of a printer. So it can be print a heart or print something like that. And next we have round brackets, which hold nothing here, but it accepts the parameters. We'll see what parameters are. And next comes the curly braces. These curly braces are the holders of whatever actions we are going to perform inside this function. For example, in our case, we have asked it to print a heart. So these two backslashes denote a single line comment, and this ... is basically to symbolize whatever action you want to perform in here. So now let's write a function. So as usual, find any compiler and let's get started. To define a function, we start with this keyword function with small f, and let's say we are going to name it print a heart. Now inside here I'm going to print, which is console log. Let's print a heart and let's take double quotes and a heart, let's say this one. Okay, and let's run it. So it does nothing. Function is like a printer, and a printer by itself does nothing unless we ask it to do something, right? In the same way, unless we are going to call a function, it will sit idle and will do nothing. So let's call it and let's make it print a heart. So we are calling print a heart, and ta-da! We have printed a heart. So this is how a function works. So our next question is, why a function? So we saw that with a function, we can perform a set of actions whenever we want. So let's say we want to print a heart 10 times. Rather than giving it this command again and again, we can simply say it once, like this is the number of copies I want you to print, and it gives us the number of copies we have asked for. So this is why we need a function, in order to avoid repeating ourselves doing the same stuff. We define a set of instructions once and make reuse of that. So next we have is parameters versus arguments. So what are parameters? So as we know, with the printer we can print in different formats. It can be a picture, it can be a PDF or something else. So when we give the printer the type, when the printer receives it, it's a parameter for it. But when we call a function and tell it that this is the type I want you to print, that is called an argument. So when function receives it, it's a parameter, and when a function is called with a type, it's an argument. So let's see the syntax. We receive a parameter or a set of parameters, and if we have a set of parameters, it will be separated by commas. Okay, now let's see the syntax for argument. So this is an argument. So we just call a function and pass it an argument. So let's see it in action. So here I'm just going to receive this parameter as file type. Okay, and I'm going to modify this. Printed a heart in format And next we are going to write the format, which is file type, or we can name it file format. Let's name it format. Okay, format. And while calling this function, I'm going to give it the format. So let's say PDF, and now I run it and it says printed a heart in format PDF. Okay, now let's print the next one in JPG format. JPG, printed a heart in format JPG. So this one here, file format, is called a parameter, and these are arguments. I hope it's clear. So now we are going to see default parameters. So let's say by default you have set the type of format for the file as PDF. So unless you go and select the format, it is going to print in PDF format, right? So the PDF here is default parameter. So let's see the syntax for it. So we simply assign a default value to the parameter, and in case we are not passing a value to it, it is going to take the default value. So for the first one, we have given it an argument. So parameter is going to have the value argument, and for the second one, whatever the default value is, it is going to make use of that. So I'm going to assign file format as PDF by default. So this is our default parameter, and let's run it first with JPG, and we have format as JPG. But now let's run it without passing anything. Okay, we don't pass it any format, and let's see what file format it prints. So it prints PDF because by default we have file format as PDF. So this is how we assign a default parameter. So next we have is return values versus void functions. So as you might have seen, for some printers it returns a confirmation to us, like this has been printed or you have printed successfully, like a message. But that's not the case for all the printers. For some printers, we don't receive any message and it performs its printing job quietly. In the same way, we have functions which return value and the functions which don't. So those functions which do not return a value are called void functions. So let's see the syntax for both. So for the functions returning a value, we just perform a set of actions and return whatever outcome we are supposed to return. So here I've simply wrote that your parameter is, and I'm going to return this string as a value. Now let's see the syntax for void functions. Here in the syntax, we have simply printed parameter. We didn't return any value from it. So this is the syntax for a void function, where we just perform our actions but don't return a value. So let's get it executed. So this function we have here is a void function. It simply runs this command, which is printed a heart in format, whatever the format is, and that's all. So having no return value to it, print a heart is a void function. Now let's write a function with a return value. So I'm going to modify this a bit. I'm going to simply and print a heart, this simply a heart, and I'm going to return this message saying printed a heart. So now on calling it, we are going to see a heart, and to see what message it returned, we are going to extract the message or that return value in a variable saying message. And let's console.log message. Okay, so this message is the value returned from print a heart. Now let's execute it. So we have a return value here which says printed a heart. Now let's make this one void. So I'm just going to comment this return part, and now if I try to print this message, it is going to say undefined. A function does not return any value. So I hope you know the difference between void functions and functions with return value now. So next we have is function expressions. So taking printer's example, function expression is basically storing a printer in a specific room, and that room has a label, and later we are going to call it by using that label, that name. So let's say we have a printer in an office and we call it office printer, and whenever you're going to call this office printer, let's say it's going to say printing from office or something like that. So let's see the syntax for it. So expression variable here is the label, and whenever we are going to call this expression, it is going to perform the same set of actions which are defined inside this function. So let's take the same office printer example. So I'm going to name this variable as office printer, and I'm going to store this function in it which prints this command saying printing from office. Okay, so whenever I'm going to call this officer printer, my bad, let's name it office printer. So whenever I'm going to call this office printer, it is going to say printing from office. Let's try calling it again. So this is how we write a simple function expression. So next we have arrow functions. So arrow functions are quick and easy. For example, using a quick print button on a printer, and we have less setup, more speed. Just like that, arrow functions are simple with no need of function keyword, and this is the syntax. So it's quite simple. We have function name equals to round brackets, which is to receive the parameters as we saw earlier. Then comes the arrow and curly braces, but we do not need curly braces always. In case it's a single line action, we can simply avoid curly braces. So let's write arrow functions. So first I'm going to comment this all, and I'm going to show you all how can we write an arrow function with single line action without curly braces. So let's say const print a heart equals to round brackets, then comes arrow, and I'm going to write a single line action. I'm going to print a heart here. So let's print it, and now let's execute this function. So let's say print a heart, and let's print it. Ta-da! We have printed a heart with a single line arrow function without curly braces. But if you need to perform multiple actions and it's not covered in one line, then you'll need curly braces for that. Now let's name it print hearts, because we are going to print multiple hearts. This one is red. Next is pink. Let's see pink heart if we have. We have it. And let's try to print it without curly braces. Let's see what it does. So let's not call this first, and let's see what it does. So we have printed a pink heart. This is not the part of print hearts function, and since we didn't call the print hearts function, we do not have red heart printed. So now let's move it all to the curly braces, and now call this print hearts, and now we can have both the hearts printed. So we have red heart first, and then comes the pink one. So this is how we can define our arrow function with curly braces when we have a set of actions to perform. So this one is a void arrow function, and similar to regular functions, arrow function can also return a value. So let's try and return a value from it. So let's return this message which says printed 2 hearts, and I'm going to receive this message in this variable named as message. And when I'm going to log this message, so we are going to log message, we are going to have printed 2 hearts as output. So I hope arrow functions are clear. So next we have is anonymous functions. So as suggested by the name, an anonymous function is a function with no name. So for example, you call the tech support and someone helps you immediately without introducing themselves. And you don't care about their name, you just care about your problem getting resolved, right? So that's what an anonymous function do. So you call an anonymous function, it gives a solution to your problem, and that's it. There's no need for it to have a label. So by referring our example, let's say you call the tech support and they give you a waiting time of 2 seconds, and after 2 seconds your problem is going to be resolved. So I'm going to use set timeout for the waiting time. So set timeout, and in here we have this function. So this one has no name and this one is a anonymous function. So waiting time is 2 seconds, and after 2 seconds it gets a problem resolved. So console.log resolved your problem. Okay, so let's run it. So you observe that it waited for 2 seconds and printed resolve your problem after that. So that's how you write an anonymous function, no label, and get your actions performed at once. So next we have callback functions. So let's say you asked a printer to print a heart, and after that you asked it to perform another action, which is to send a confirmation mail about the same. So you define a separate function for that another action and you pass that function to the main function, which is to print a heart. So the function here to be called later is the confirmation mail one, and that one is called a callback function since you're calling it back after you are done printing a heart. Okay, so let's see the syntax for it. So this is the syntax. You receive a callback function as a parameter, and after performing your actions, you execute the callback. So let's write a callback function. Let's define this. Const send a mail and let's say it says confirmation mail, confirmation email sent. Okay, now let's define a main function. Const print a heart, and we are going to receive callback function in here as a parameter, and later we are going to execute it. So first we are going to print a heart. So let's print it, and then we are going to call the callback function. So callback. So let's call print a heart with this callback, which is send a mail. So let's run it. So first we have printed a heart, and later by calling this callback we have this confirmation email sent message printed. So this is how you write a callback function. It is going to be called back. I hope it makes sense. Now let's see first class functions. So functions in JavaScript are like Lego blocks. You can pick them up, hand them to others, connect them in new ways, or even create other Lego blocks with them. So just like Lego blocks, functions in JavaScript are flexible, modular, and powerful. We have already seen a function expression. There we stored a function in a variable. We can also pass a function as an argument. We can return a function from another function, and we can also assign functions to object properties. Like an object can have a key which will have a function as a value. So that means functions in JavaScript are treated like any other value. They can be stored, passed, returned, and assigned. That's what makes them first class citizens in the language. It's like having Lego blocks with superpowers. You can build anything, reuse parts, and even create builders that create more parts. So we have already seen function expression, which is storing a function in a variable. Now let's see how to pass a function as an argument. So first we have a function which we named as arg function, and we are going to pass this function as an argument to a main function. Okay? And our main function is going to execute this arg function. So this is how we are going to call it. Inside main function, we are simply going to pass argument function. So it's quite similar to a callback function. The only difference is a callback function is called after performing a set of actions in the main function. But that's not always the case with passing function as an argument. It's simply sending a function to another, and it might be used immediately or later. So here we are calling callback after printing a heart. But with a regular argument function, it can be called at any order depending on the use case. For example, let's write a function to greet. So I'm going to remove this, or I'm just going to modify this as greet. So let's rename it as greet, and it says hello from Wade the JavaScript. Okay. Let's rename it to a function because it's not necessarily a callback, and we can call it before printing also. So I'm going to call it before, and I'm going to pass this greet function here as an argument to print a heart. So let's run it. And we have hello from Wade the JavaScript printed before printing a heart. So greet function here is being passed as an argument function to print a heart. So this is useful when we want to do some calculations, and those calculations can be done inside a function. And taking the value from that function, we can proceed with further calculations or whatever action we are required to perform. And it can happen in any order. It can happen in between the actions of the main function. It can happen before the actions of the main function or after the calculations. It's basically giving some instructions. So next, let's see returning a function from another function. So this is the syntax of a function which returns another function, and this is how we are going to call it. So from the return function, we are going to store the value in this variable named as return function, and later we can call this function whenever required. So let's take an example of a function which is a multiplier of 2. Basically, whatever number we are going to give it, it's going to return us the number multiplied by 2. So let's write it const multiplier of 2 is equals to number, and then we are going to return a function from it which is return function, and let's return the number, return number into 2. Okay, so let's call multiplier of 2 const get value is equals to multiplier of 2. Let's pass it 5. So we are going to get 5 multiplied by 2. So now I'm going to console.log get value. Since multiplier of 2 returns a function, so get value is also going to be a function, and we are going to call it as a function. So let's execute it. So we have value 5 multiplied by 2, and we have 5 times 2 or 2 times 5 as 10. And now we are going to see assigning functions to object properties. So this is the syntax for it, and here we have key named as fn to denote a function and function as a value to it. So to assign a function to an object property, we are simply going to define an object first. Object is equal to, now we are going to assign it a function with key greet, and here we are going to have a function as value, perform the action which is to print the greeting hello from Wade the JavaScript. Okay, Now to call this greet function, we'll need to call object.greet. So let's run it. And we have hello from Wade the JavaScript printed. So this is how we assign a function to an object property. So I hope this is clear. And congratulations, with this you have covered functions in JavaScript. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We have got more bits coming your way. Thank you.